Please welcome the panel on The Road to the American Dream, Entrepreneurship and Innovation, moderated by Rachel Goslins, Executive Director of the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream.
Well, hello. Thank you for starting your morning with us here in the beautiful Wilshire Garden. And I'm super excited to welcome all you all and our amazing panel to spend a little while talking about the intersection of the American dream and entrepreneurship. How much the concept of the American dream drives entrepreneurship in general, how it intersects with the lives of entrepreneurs personally, and what its limitations might be. The American dream continues to be an incredibly compelling narrative for this country. I made a game during the presidential elections, 8 months ago, to watch every presidential debate and major campaign speech and time how long it took for the first mention of the phrase American dream. And it was never more than 2 minutes, and often within the first 30 seconds, one of the two candidates would say the words American dream. So while everybody agrees it is an important construct through which we look at our country, there's a hard disagree in many instances on whether it is still alive and well or not, and what it might mean. I actually thought I might take a minute here and poll the audience. I love doing this whenever I can, and ask you all whether you think the American dream is holding strong or whether you think it's struggling. So everybody who thinks the American dream is holding strong, can you raise your hands? Holy crap. All right, we got 2, 3, 4. And people who think it is struggling. Oh. All right, so that's fascinating. It's so interesting to see how these answers change depending on the room and depending on the time. I'd love to turn to the panel. We have an amazing panel here of entrepreneurs and American dream stories in their own right from lots of different walks of life. And before we get into your backstories, I'd love to ask just a quick poll for you guys, slightly different version. Are you optimistic about the future of the American dream, or are you concerned? Bing? Is that a sideways?
Sideways.
If you were an emoji, it would be the one with the flat mouth?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm not optimistic, but I'm persistent and resilient. We'll say that.
I love that. David?
I got to be an optimist. I work with startups, so there's so much to worry about. I see it in them. I think it's facing competition in the world, but I think it's still something people are very hopeful about.
Shamina?
Cautiously optimistic.
Love it.
Very optimistic.
Oh, this is fantastic. We have like a spectrum. We have like a wonderful continuum. All right, well, I think I want to dig into a little bit more about why, and I'd love to start. You are each American dream stories from wildly different, places in the spectrum. People who were born here, people who immigrated here, people who came here at different ages. You work in different aspects of entrepreneurship. I'd love to hear a little bit about your family and where you first remember the concept of the American dream kind of showing up in your life. Bing, can we start with you?
Sure. As the person who needs the most therapy in this sort of spectrum, I'm very much the product of an American dream couple. My parents' parents fled during the revolution from China to Taiwan, and then both found each other. They moved here with truly nothing more than each other and maybe $50 and the American dream, and very much became it. Within one generation, moved from the bottom decile of economic sort of value or equity, and moved to the top 1%. So are very much emblematic of what this country can afford to people who do not speak English, who do not know anyone, who candidly have no friends and so forth. And so I'm very grateful for that. I think the way that they taught us about the American dream was first and foremost, in the words of Dr. Angelou, a heuristic of feeling. It is the idea that anything is actually possible and can be palpable within their case, one generation. Secondly, of course, though, at a numeric level, it's about upward economic mobility. So that's how I think my parents would have defined it, though, asterisk, I do not define it that way anymore.
Oh, well, okay, we're going to get to how you define it. 'Cause
I'm polite
super excited
and yes.
to hear that. David, what about you? Tell us your origin story.
Well, I grew up in Florida. My dad started an accounting firm in a small town, and built something. And I was able to work in that firm. So I really think of him as my example of that American dream, sort of going from nothing to something in a small community, being a part of the fabric of that small town. Just remember working in that office. I remember the employees that he had. And in fact, my mom's 90th birthday was last weekend. And I went to that birthday and I met a few of those employees that said, he changed my life. And so I like to think of it as sort of multi-generational, right? I think a lot of people who talk about the American dream are maybe doing it more for their kids than even for themselves. And when I think back on it, it obviously created opportunities for me that I would not have had otherwise, to be able to go to college, to be able to invest in a lot of startups. And today I really see it through the lens of all of the companies that we invest in, where they view America as like this unique opportunity, want to move there, and so many stories of companies that have followed that dream, and all of that was enabled, I feel like, because of what my own family and my own father went through, just becoming an entrepreneur and risking all of that in a very sort of non-growth oriented way. Just, hey, I'm an accounting firm here in this little town in DeLand, Florida, and it sort of changed the trajectory of the family.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Shamina?
Well, thanks for having me here. It's really nice to be on stage with all of you. I think that my origin story is that I'm the first daughter born to my parents in the United States. And so my father came from India in the 60s on when the academic visas opened up, to complete his PhD. And I think my origin story is really geography is destiny. My parents moved. And that, I think, is a big part of the American dream, is movement and mobility. And so they really moved to the United States, ultimately with three of my sisters who were born in India, and then two of us were born here. And I think the story of our family is that we're one, happy family, but the two daughters born in the United States, compared to the three daughters born in India, even though we were all young when we moved, ended up being in completely different paths. And so I think that there is something about movement, and there's something about being born and raised in the United States that may have a different experience.
I think you said on our prep call, you said your can you say about your rite of passage, which wasn't a birthday party?
Yeah, just very quickly. So I think that's what for a lot of us who come to the United States, or my family who came to the United States, when you turn 18, it's like my friends in Southern Virginia would get cars, or they'd get, big parties or big 18th, birthday parties. For us, the rite of passage when we turned 18 wasn't a big party, it was voting. And so that was the moment where our parents said, now you belong. America is built on democracy. And your ability to become an adult and thrive in this country, the reason why we came here is to vote, because that's the great equalizer. So my big memory of turning 18 is going to the fire station to cast my first vote.
I love that. Thank you. Anastasia, you are in many ways a great version of the quintessential American dream. You came here as a young woman and built an amazing empire. Can you tell us your story?
Well, I was born in Romania. My grandparents emigrated during the Second War from Macedonia to Romania. So my grandfather was an immigrant, and I remember during the communist regime, I was probably 15, he will take me in a small room, we close the windows and the shades, and we'll listen through a small little radio station called Free America, Voice of America. And he used to tell me, I did a big mistake coming to Romania because the communist regime took everything away from us. You should go to America. That is the American dream. So I grew up with that. And of course, my dream was since then to come to America, to follow that American dream, what my grandfather said. And I did. In 1989, I came to United States. I didn't speak the language. I couldn't leave the country even with a coin to make a phone call because I wasn't allowed. They will put me in jail if I was leaving with anything. And I came here to chase that American dream.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, then what happened?
And then I cried for 6 months, and then I realized that I have to do something. I took a job as an esthetician because it didn't require perfect English. And I started working as an esthetician, and I saw a gap in the beauty industry at that time that nobody paid attention to eyebrows. And my art teacher in Romania always put such an emphasis on if you want to draw a portrait and you want to change an emotion, you change the eyebrows. And I studied the Leonardo da Vinci theory on the golden ratio. He applied golden ratio on all his art. And I started fixing my own eyebrows because I was a victim of the 80 with pencil-thin round eyebrows. And
Ladies,
after that,
we all know that.
Yeah, we all did. And my clients started looking at me and saw a change. They didn't know exactly what it was. So I started doing that for free because in 1990 wasn't considered a service, eyebrows. And the owner didn't really believe in eyebrows, and I decided to rent a small room in a salon. My husband thought I am totally crazy because I remembered exactly this phrase. You don't know how to write a check. You don't have a credit card. You barely speak the language, and you want to open a business. Not even American people born here own a business. It's like, but what do I have to lose? So I pursued that. From that little room, I built a clientele. So everything was step by step.
Yeah.
It was an authentic desire that I wanted to help women to look beautiful, to feel better. So I decided to open a salon in Beverly Hills, which that came with some other challenges because the owner didn't want to rent me a space in Beverly Hills. But I didn't take no as an answer, which is the American spirit, the immigrant spirit. And I opened a salon, and then I started creating a product line, and
The rest is eyebrow history.
the rest is history. I am proud to say that I invented a category in beauty industry that didn't existed before.
Fantastic.
And that's the immigrant story in this country. Everybody comes with a dream, and they will see an opportunity that nobody else paid attention.
I love that. So you actually gave me a great lead into my next question. I'd love to talk a little bit about what the American dream means. I think you, Anastasia, gave us one definition. Beng, you alluded to the fact that your definition might be different than your father's. There are lots of variations on the American dream. There are polls that come out. What it means comes out, a poll comes out every week. And so people use different words. There's always a core driving theme, right? That the American dream at its core is the idea that if you work hard and you have ambition, you should have the opportunity to get ahead. At the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream, we recently did a study with Gallup, and in a bunch of definitional questions, we asked one that sort of was super interesting to me. We asked about whether the American dream for people was more about growth, this idea that you're going to have mobility, that you're going to do better than your parents, that the system gives you wings to fly, or stability, this idea that if you work hard and do your best, you should be able to have a house and a car and put your kids through college and retire. And interestingly, the thousands of people we polled were pretty much evenly split, 51-49, between growth and stability as a value. So I'd love to throw that question. You'd think that for entrepreneurs, it would be across the board, growth would be the paradigm that was most compelling. But I'd love to hear each of you talk a little bit about what your definition is of the American dream and why. And I think instead of continuing to go, I'm just going to start with you, David.
Okay. I feel like it's one of these things where maybe the definition is almost dangerous because it can mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
In my world, as a early stage investor, investment platform, all the people we work with think of it as high growth. right? But then you hear the stories of people that just think about it as creating stability and being able to own a home. So I think it can mean different things to different people, and I think that's good, right? And so it doesn't really matter what my definition is. I think we get the idea of it, and I think the thing that's missed about it that's so powerful is it's not really just about that entrepreneur, that one person. It's about the collective. The reason it's so powerful is the American dream is a collective dream for America. You know, when someone is successful, sure, they do well and they generate wealth and all of those things, but they also generate growth in their community, they generate jobs, they, in many cases, give back in different ways. And I think that's the really powerful part of this collective American dream.
Huh, interesting. Shamina, what do you think?
So I'll start with the second part of your question first, because at the Center for Inclusive Growth, we focus globally, but our signature initiative is around small business. We call it Strive. And the reason we call it Strive is that when we were doing research on small business owners globally, in entrepreneurship, they fell into a bunch of different categories, from $100 million to $2 million to sole proprietorships, et cetera, et cetera. So our model at the center is to leverage the assets of the company in ways that we can be catalytic. So we identified a segment of entrepreneurs / small business owners that we call strivers. These are people who have a propensity to grow. They're usually, we call them the missing middle. They are too large maybe for a microfinance loan, or they're still working on using their own credit card for, or family and friends financing for their business. They haven't graduated yet into a formal bank or a formal loan. And so they fall into this gap called the missing middle, and that's really the gap that we try to catalyze investment in, because at that moment is when they will succeed or fail. So we call them strivers, 2 to 20, usually in business for 2 years. And that's been universal across the world in terms of what we found with the small business owners. I think the thing that's interesting about this notion of stability versus growth is that it's not necessarily about the dream part. They all want to be successful. And I think that's part of what the definition of the American dream is. There's this dream of the individual has of being successful, of reaching productivity, of taking care of our families. That's all there. It's the implementation, I think, that is, and the access to the implementation that is the piece that causes consternation and consideration and a little bit of the fear. So I think that when you see this dichotomy between growth versus stability, it's not necessarily, I don't find, at least with our research, it's not that they don't want to necessarily grow and succeed. It's about income fluctuations. What they don't like, what our research has shown, is that they don't want to ride these waves of one day it's up, one day it's down, 6 months it's up, I got an invoice, the next month it's down because I had to pay the invoice, I haven't been paid by my vendor, etc. My kid got sick. So what they don't like is the income fluctuation. What they want is the stability of even income, so that they have a platform upon which to grow. And so just a little bit of context, I think, around it's not necessarily a yes or no when it's about the American dream or any dream or small business. It's more about the context of the conversation and where you are in the journey.
Anastasia, how would you define the American dream?
Well, to me, American dream is the opportunity to come to this country and do things that not even in your wildest dream you could achieve things. So to me is proving to yourself that you could do so many things, because I came from a communist regime where you work only for the government and that's it. You couldn't be an entrepreneur. I wanted to first to show myself that what I'm capable of doing. And then, of course, you grow that, and you want to give to employees, you want to build community, you want to give back, you want to make your community feel good and look good. So it goes beyond that. It's a platform where you achieve the dream. But after that, what? You have to continue. Personally, I still work like I can't pay my rent next month. because I love what I do. I'm passionate, I'm authentic. I want to do my best to my community, to the country, to everything around me. And I wish I will have, when I came 34 years ago, these people, David and Shamina, to get to know them, because they are dream makers. You give the ability of people to do that. When I came here, nobody paid attention. Nobody. I couldn't get a credit card.
Right.
By the way, I went to Wells Fargo and I had to beg the manager to give me $500 credit card, because 34 years ago, they didn't throw at you with credit cards like they are doing right now. But you are dream makers. So now I think to talk about other opportunities, they are, because there are people like David and Shamina and Bing that will help other small entrepreneurs to follow their dream. That's my sense of American dream.
I'm changing the name of this panel to the Dream Makers panel.
Yes, they are the dream makers.
Bing, tell me a little bit about how you think of the definition of the American dream and how it might have changed from your parents.
So I'll be the negative one. First of all, I think there's something really beautifully poetic about the duality of stability and growth. I also agree with David that for something this broad, that's highly malleable and customizable, we might need to go sort of narrow. So I would define the American dream as purely upward economic mobility in its purest form. And at the expense of dunking on the beautiful duality of growth and stability, when you look at growth in its simplest form, wages for middle and working class families have only increased 17% in the last half century, whereas for the top 1%, they've increased 300%, which of course has widened the income gap. Now, you have to ask yourself, if the American dream in upward mobility is possible for some, does it still exist when it's not possible for most? So that's number one. The second is on stability. You look at the two greatest hallmarks of how you actually surmount your economic bracket, and they are education, who you marry. These are the two easiest ways to leapfrog your economic bracket. Now, I don't need to tell all of y'all what the economic system looks like. From zoning laws in kindergarten all the way to lack of access and being priced out in universities that are overpriced, we all know what academic institutions look like in this country and what we need to do. Second is marriage. How many of y'all have kids that are 18 to 32? How many of them are married? Exactly. Are you nervous? Because 20 years ago, by the time they're 27, they should have been married by now. Their first kid should have been on the way by 30. Now, this is a trend. Many of us are actually not getting married at all. If getting married, and if we do, we actually delay it. Now, this is for a variety of reasons. Number one, Tinder sucks. Number two, people suck. And number three, having compatibility, as we all know now the hard way, now given many of us are in the life cycle of getting divorces, of having your best friend, your romantic partner, your professional partner, the parent of your children, your sexual partner, your adventurous partner, be one person is crazy. It's very difficult. So marriage is now being delayed too. Third, the other hallmark economically of stability is home ownership. I don't need to tell anyone here what home ownership in this country looks like. You have a bunch of millennials and Gen Z who can't even afford student loans, can't afford to get married. Do you think they're affording a full condo or house, or needless to say having children? They're not. And so once again, if some of us are able to achieve a dream, does the dream still exist? If most of us, or for most of us, if that dream is a nightmare, that's, I think, the harder question we have to ask ourselves. I still think it exists if it exists for some. It means it's possible. But it does mean those of us for whom it exists have a double responsibility to make sure it can exist for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, it feels a little bit like a straw horse to say if it doesn't exist for everybody, then it doesn't exist at all.
Agreed.
It has never existed
Agreed.
equally for everybody.
Nothing does.
That's the power of the American dream as an ideal,
Yes.
Even when the reality of it is struggling. And I want to get into that more, and I want to thank you for raising, this doesn't need to be everything's fine, everything's rosy, nothing to see here, look away. You raised some really important questions. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into entrepreneurship. We spent some time on the American dream. And so, America in a way, and you referenced this so beautifully, Anastasia, in your remarks, its brand is America is the best place in the world to be an entrepreneur. And I think many would argue that despite challenges, that is still true. If you want to start a business anywhere, this would be the best place to do it. But I'm curious, from each of your perspectives, what are the conditions precedent for a system that supports entrepreneurship? And what does America get right in this instance? David, do you want to start? You've invested in some of the most transformative and successful companies over the last couple of decades. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's so much about the opportunity in the community. Anastasia talked about not having a lot of help getting started, but I think that has really developed today. And so this notion of startup communities and how they grow and thrive is so powerful. And for context, we operate in a lot of different countries and a lot of different cities in those countries on the ground, investing in very early stage startups. And so the information is now out there about how to build a company, how to raise a little bit of capital, how to find mentorship. That's really changed, I think is a really additive and powerful thing today. But effectively, I think you need the capital. You need the community to support the entrepreneur and what they're trying to do, mentorship. These are the things that I think are the ingredients that really make America work so well, that people do want to give. And a lot of times they really give first, right? This is what you see in these communities where it's not always transactional. It's just, oh, you're trying to do a thing. I'm interested in that. I would help you. I'll use my experience. I'll use my network. You have to obviously be in an environment where it's pro-business, a regulatory environment works for you versus, sort of a system of oppression or not allowing things to happen. So I think we have a unique blend of those things, but as I said earlier, competition in the world is really bubbling up. Like Europe is becoming a much easier place to build a high growth startup, for example, and I think we're being challenged more and more. We see a lot of companies in our system that can't come to the U.S., and so they end up in Toronto, as close as they can get, right? Because they want to be able to access the market, access the people. And so I think we have to be careful not to damage some of the core advantages we do have.
Yeah. Anastasia, we talked in the Secret Writing Room. You were on the phone with Europe on your way to this panel, and I know you do a lot of work internationally. How do you see the conditions for business in the United States versus what you're seeing in Europe?
The best example I could give you is I left in '89 to United States, and my sister went to Austria, both in the same time. We both worked long hours, very hard. I started the business here. She started the restaurant business, a coffee shop. Then she grew from coffee shop to a restaurant. Then from the restaurant, she opened a club. She was working, probably sleeping 4 hours a night, the rest working. She was still an Ausländer, which means an immigrant. She couldn't get an apartment in the neighborhood where they were the Austrian people. She could never grow the way, she never had the opportunities that I had here. So I will never, maybe Europe has less regulation than us for small businesses, but I will never ever compare United States with Europe on the ability of creating that a small business or to be an entrepreneur. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Bing, you invest in communities of entrepreneurs and thinkers and young business people in the Asian Pacific community. What do you think are what sets the table for a successful ecosystem of entrepreneurial function?
I think it's similar to what David and Anastasia just alluded to. It has to start with the great endemic community. Not to dunk on the rest of the world, but the highest density of top quality talent is definitely still in the United States. There's no question about it. And it's for a variety of reasons. I think second is both fluid access to capital, which is increasingly becoming more accessible to the people who are not coastal elites, and also capacity building. I really believe in our ability there, and particularly at Gold House, the types of services that we provide that are really market leading to take companies all the way. And then third, I really believe in a lot of our distribution paths. You don't have to have a massive marketing budget to thrive in your go-to-market strategy in the United States. And then the final one that I think is a little volatile now, of course, is government regulation, sort of openness. This is still, pound for pound, the most productive country in the world, in even that regard, I'd say, agnostic of what's been happening over the past few years. So we're very, very encouraged. I think the other place that we are looking, though, is we know that all new great industries, companies, and so forth are built from hybridization. So my previous life at YouTube was effectively a hybridization of technology, creativity, and the advertising business, something that we take really for granted in this form today, or a decade and a half later. The hybrid that we're excited about is, we call it the Gold Bridge, or the Pacific Bridge. The idea that the Asian diaspora, which is really not just a racial identity, it's really a continental and a cultural identity, and in Milken parlance, a commercial identity. Sorry, that was not a funny joke. Sorry. Wake up to money, yay. Rich. But the idea is that there is the single largest bequeathment of wealth happening in history, and so much of it is driven by the Asia-Pacific diaspora and continent. There is no alignment, cohesion across the continent and the Pacific right now. And so our ambition is, how do we just bridge this in a way where you can just call someone and raise money meaningfully? You can call someone and get immediate distribution in Indonesia because of XYZ, per capita, highest engagement, on social. So that's the other sort of lever that I think we're currently missing, just as a people, that we're personally invested in.
Shamina, your center has done a lot of thinking about this. What do entrepreneurs need to succeed?
So I think our view is there are three things. So one is access to capital, of course. The other is the ability to go digital or to maximize technology. And the third is access to networks and know-how. And I think that I want to say a bit about networks, because I think the thematic that we're hearing here is your ability to access any kind of success is based on, and what I'm hearing here is who you know. And so for our parents, or my parents at least, geography was that they had to move to a place where they didn't know anybody. And how do you build access to a network where a lot of what you need for credit or for business is based on who can vouch for me? Who is the person who can say, no, go ahead and lend to this person. No, go ahead and rent to this apartment to this person because they can pay it back. And so when you are coming from a different place, it is very hard to standardize that kind of access to a network, right? And so I just raised that because the further you are from any one of these networks, whether it's who you know, a network around technology, electricity, referrals, education, your ability to succeed is going to be determined by that. So our goal at the center is to reduce the barriers to the networks, is to really think through what are the barriers for small business owners to access capital, to maximize technology, to access the know-how they need to succeed. And I'll just close with one example. And you talked about your sister being in two different locations. I'll talk about a business owners that we've been working with in two different places in the United States. One opened a coffee shop in South Dakota, and she didn't have the access to people who could vouch for her. So one of the things that we realized is we looked at the tribal communities and compared them to South Asian communities, specifically South Asian communities who came from the state of Gujarat in India and came here and started building businesses in the hotel space. Do you realize that the largest hotel owners in the United States are Asian Americans? And of those, Gujarati Asian Americans, have you heard of the Patel Hotel? But the reason is they came and established a presence in a market and then expanded the network of people they know to people in their community. So on that same notion of like looking at the Asian American Hotel Owners Association and looking at that model, taking that and looking at the tribal community and looking at that model, we've started to help this woman and understand how do we build wealth in community, in proximity. But it's a very conscious effort to make sure that we are bringing in government subsidy money, state subsidy money, investment capital. All of those things are needed to build the platform so that it becomes a place where you can pick. these people can pick up the phone and say, hey, give her a credit card. Hey, give this person a loan. So it's a bit of a mix between the personal and the relational and the systemic work that's required, that technology today allows for that to happen at monumental speed. So the real opportunity here is that we don't have to wait for over a long period of time to get this done. What technology and going digital allows us to do is move apace and make change happen very quickly.
Can you give me a specific example about that? Like, I feel like we often say, and technology is going to help everything, but how does technology help this mentorship network finding new talent?
I'll give you, so COVID, okay? So what we knew during COVID going in was that it would be really hard. It's really hard anyways, but we knew going in for COVID, businesses that had not gone digital were going to fall down fast. And we saw it. And the places where we saw it in the United States were in enclaves of communities. We did research with Chinatown. We did researches in Little Koreas. We did research in South Asian communities and Hispanic communities. What we saw was the lower rates of digitization, the ability to go online, the ability to deliver, the ability to accept non-cash payments determined their success during COVID. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. So the work that we did with an organization in the United States called Grameen USA, which focuses on lending to women business owners, and these are like $2,000 loans. These are like $1,000 loans. These are not $25,000 loans, but they're small loans that target women across the United States. We had worked with them over 7 years ago to build their technology platform to ensure that their ability to distribute the lending was digital, not analog. You'll be surprised. Like, people were literally, you'd have to show up at a Grameen site, get your cash, fill out the paperwork, and literally be handed your cash, and then say, okay, go open up your bank account at whatever. So 7 years ago, we worked with them to say, nope, you got to digitize that entire process. You have to automate that entire process. You have to figure out how to get the loan underwriting done quickly. You've got to do the training and the access and the education via Zoom, or not via Zoom, but via digitally. 7 years in, when COVID hit, they had the ability to move their entire base onto a digital platform. And they have grown over 40% since COVID, where other organizations who have not gone digital have stayed flat or decreased.
Thank you. I want to turn to both you, David and Bing, as well. I want to take a second. I forgot to mention, if anybody has a question for our fantastic panel, we're going to take questions at the end. There's a QR code that we'll keep on the screen for a minute. And for those of you watching on the live stream, please feel free to send in your questions, and I will get them on my handy-dandy iPad. So I'd love to get back to what we started to talk about, Shamina. How do, as both of you think about how to find new talent, how to, I guess it's begging the question, do you think about how do we provide a counterweight to the propensity of networks to self-reinforce, and for people outside of networks to not have the same access to mentorship or dream makers? How do you think about finding new talent? How do you think about balancing that curve? Bing, do you want to start? I mean, that was your whole job at YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Finding new talent and amplifying them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Sisyphean task, and it's honestly like walking on eggshells, because everything you do it just gets attacked. One is, candidly, we have quotas. We grew up in a world where 51% of the world is women. I'm the son of a single mother. Since the beginning, it has been uncompromising that half of the money that we spend and deploy has to be to women, and we have adhered to that. Women also, by the way, make more profitable companies for reasons we can prophesize all day long. So it's also just good business. I know not everyone subscribes to quotas, but markers of success that are numeric are important. The second is relocating or distributing where success can be had. I think we all know the sort of trope of Silicon Valley, Silicon Alley, and so forth. We've been partnering up with various cities and governments to go out of our way and really go into the way of finding entrepreneurs anywhere. And that's through development programs. It's not very capital intensive. There's mutual alignment with the localities, so forth and so on. And that's the best. Oh, and then one more. Sorry, that's the best I've got. The other one that I'm really excited by is there are certain demographics and profiles that we can debate whether it's causal or correlative over index in being successful founders. And I won't regale you with this. You can go to our website and study all of it as the spoiler. But we do feel a particular responsibility to bridge access to all communities. And so we have this effort at Gold House called One House that persists everything we do, where we lock capital, community, and distribution with all of our multicultural counterparts for collective gain. So the pragmatic example of this with our venture fund is called the One House Leadership Alliance. It is the single largest and first of its kind board placement effort of the top multiculturally founded and focused funds. It's us, Harlem Capital, NACP's forthcoming 200, Angels, BBG, Golden Seeds, Female Founders Fund, blah, blah, blah. It's the party, and we swap board directors and advisors, and that effort has already placed over 100 board directors of the leading venture-backed public and privately traded companies. We all know boards run the world, and so this is part of our contribution of widening access, not just to us, but from us for everybody.
Interesting. David, at Techstars, how do you think about finding talent and going outside of your comfort zone?
Yeah, I mean, my observation is the world is full of entrepreneurs who deserve a shot. And many, many, many of them don't get that shot because they don't have access to the networks that you talked about. We are, high volume investors, 500 or so new investments a year. That's a drop in the bucket of the number of people that are out there that are motivated, excited to go and build something. So, we're really just trying to make sure that we are finding the best possible investments we can. Ultimately, we are, our job is pretty simple. Our LPs give us a big bag of money, and we have to give them back a bigger bag of money someday.
Are they actually in bags? Like
sometimes. And that's really all it is.
Very cool.
They better be bags.
And so it's about finding the best available opportunities, but many, many, many of them are overlooked, right? Many of them are in places that you don't expect them to come from. They don't have the networks, and so you have to bring that to them. And that fundamentally is what we do, is we bring 8,000 experienced mentors to the table. We bring, capital that's willing to invest in you before there's any proof, right? Because of who you are and a little bit about what you're doing, but mostly who you are, right? Your desire, your intrinsic motivation. And so, Techstars Anywhere is one example of this. We have historically done, Techstars Chicago and Techstars LA and Techstars Singapore. We started doing something called Techstars Anywhere, which opens up the same opportunity if you can't physically go and be somewhere for a period of time. And I think that, that opens it up. I think the last comment, I'd echo what you were saying, is being intentional about it, right? You have to decide what you want to do, who you want to invest in, demographics, geographies, and then you have to intentionally go do it. Otherwise, you fall victim to the same biases that we all have.
In our prep call, we talked a little bit about how important mentorship is to you as you think about entrepreneurship, and maybe that comes from your early experience working in your father's accountant's office. Can you talk a little bit about the role that mentorship plays and how you approach what you do?
Sure. I mean, I talked earlier about startup communities, and each of the communities that we operate in, we have usually 100 to 200 experienced mentors that are willing to give of their time, that can come and change the game for a company. And whether that's sticking them on a plane to go meet the CEO of some big company they need to meet, or vouching for them, as we heard about, that is the rare asset, right? I think a lot of these entrepreneurs have the drive, they have the good idea, they just don't have the experience around them to not do it for them, but help them avoid those landmines, right? Help them unearth opportunities. And I always like to give the really simple example. The first ever company acquired out of our portfolio was a $10 million exit in 2008. Okay, it was a $5 million exit until a mentor got on the phone and said 10. So in that moment, that mentor created $5 million of value, doubled the outcome. A small story, but that's what an experienced mentor can bring to the table. Not only the introduction, but the know-how of how to navigate a situation. And that's what we're trying to bring to entrepreneurs at scale.
I'm curious, Anastasia, as you have come up in your story and achieve the success that you have you found opportunities to mentor other young entrepreneurs along the way,
Yes.
so that you could give them what you wish you'd had?
Yes, absolutely. I mentor a lot of young people. I have one charity called Anastasia Brighton Horizon. So I partner with United Friends of Children. It's an organization that helps young adults after foster home. They are out of the foster home at 18, and they help them with housing and helping them to get jobs. So I partner with them. They handpick the people from me that want to go to beauty school, and then partner with Paul Meacham Beauty School. We pay for their school at Paul Meacham, and after the 9 months to a year, they will come and we train them. We give them all the kits to really learn how to do makeup, how to do eyebrows, to become entrepreneurs. And I have so many success stories of women that they had no hope, and now they have their own business. And I had an event with them, and I asked, what's next for you? She's like, we want to be Anastasia.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to see people. And I hope I'm going to, just telling my story constantly, I will inspire other people that have no hope to follow their dream. I think it's very important to talk about, and I'm an immigrant. I came here with nothing. So many other people could relate to that story. And it's important to talk about and encourage other people to do so.
Yeah, that's a great plug for what we're trying to build in DC at the Center for Advancing the American Dream, where we tell hundreds, if not thousands, of stories of folks like you, Anastasia, and like the other folks on the panel who are helping more people find pathways to opportunity. We got a bunch of really interesting questions while we've been talking, and I wanted to just throw a couple at you before we wrap up. This one I thought was really interesting. What's one myth about entrepreneurship that you feel should be unlearned in order to create more inclusive opportunities? It's a great question. Whoever threw that in, good job. Who wants to take that one first? David?
You must build your high-growth startup in Silicon Valley. There is no other place in the world where you can do that. That's so obviously comical and false now, that fewer people are saying it, but that's been a persistent myth, that if you don't move your startup eventually to the Bay Area, you can't possibly be successful. And I think that is just ignoring the obvious data that's out there. We are seeing great companies being built more and more all over the world, and a lot of them end up moving there, but they're not necessarily started there, so don't fall victim to that one.
Good to know. Shamina, what do you think?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that there's so many myth-shattering things. I think the thing that I sort of think about when it comes to entrepreneurship is you have no business being or even calling yourself somebody who supports entrepreneurs and helping if you can't do two things: save time and make money with them or for them. And so anything else, I think, is the myth. That's the myth of the entrepreneur. It's like, oh, I need to do this, or I need to go here, or I need, like, there's all these things that take up time and waste money. And so I think the myth that I'd want to shatter is is to focus on the things that are going to leverage your assets for the most impact. And so, if anything, I would just sort of say, every entrepreneur, every small business, they've told me in so many words that it's not about decision making. I know how to make decisions for myself and for my family. It's about ensuring that when I seek help or when I seek access to make those decisions a reality, the people who are helping me know that there are two things I need. I need to save time, and I need to make money.
Interesting.
Speaking of the tech, what David said, for many years, probably in the last 20 years, everybody focused on the technology, investment in businesses. The other day, I had a dinner with a friend, and she told me about a story of a gentleman an Armenian gentleman that started a business, a plumbing business, and he opened an app with a partner, and they sold that for $1 billion. So plumbing and everything service. If you think about it, you can't find a plumber. You cannot find an air condition guy to fix I'm in a service business, so I always pay attention to those maybe appear like little and insignificant, but they are very important because we all need air condition, we all need painters, we all need construction. There are opportunities all the time.
Yeah, I love that not all opportunities
Yes.
are starting another tech startup in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
Bing, what do you think? Is there a myth that you think should be busted?
The controversial one I want to say is that you need a CS degree and a technical co-founder in the way you did a decade ago, which is just increasingly not the case because of Gen AI and streamlining there. But I think the one that many of us know is that entrepreneurship is glitzy and faster than you think, when in reality it takes 7 to 10 years for whatever reason consistently to find real prominence. And 51% of my days suck. If 51% of your day is good, that is a fantastic day as an entrepreneur. It's not 80-20, it's 51. That is a perfect, beautiful day. Entrepreneurship is tough. It's really, really, really rough. And I don't think that most people still see that side.
Interesting. We got a question from the audience that I thought was interesting, asking about social entrepreneurship. Right, entrepreneurs that are sort of working towards a double bottom line, or their entrepreneurial activity is specifically aimed towards increasing societal good. Do you think of that as a different category? Is that just the same as entrepreneurship? Is there something that a social entrepreneur should think about differently than I don't think pure entrepreneur is the right word, but the alternative?
I think this is a generational thing. I think I don't want to monopolize the millennial and Gen Z sort of generations, but all the best for-profit companies are pure in purpose. All the pure in purpose nonprofits and otherwise companies are as sustainable and scalable as a large enterprise. So be able to figure out the legal structure, the operational talent incentives and retention packages, and product that suits a market that satisfies both is what most people in our generation actually want. So when I hear social entrepreneurship, I actually hear a redundancy. I think we're all trying to do well and good, period. Agnostic of what OpenAI has now reneged on, or may not have reneged on. But yeah, I think they are one and the same now.
David, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't separate them logically. I think they have some intrinsic advantages actually in some cases. And if you look at there's 5,000 companies we've invested in. Some subset of them would self-describe this way. As a cohort, they're actually doing a little better.
Say more about that. And
just the data we have, right, from our perspective, that it's a large portfolio, but it's only 5,000 data points, where they're able to raise money a little more easily, especially at the early stage, because they have a story that is going to connect with people that want to invest. People, as you pointed out, generationally want to use something that they believe in. They believe in the mission, not just the product. And so I think those things show up in the portfolio, but to me, they're not different fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
To piggyback on that, we're seeing this in the foundation world as well. A lot of the foundations now are getting smart that giving out money is not a sustainable growth strategy. And so now have this very beautiful hurdle rate of just 3%. And so they're starting to now, they call it impact investing, I think, right?
Just describe hurdle rate for those.
Getting back basically 3% on your investment, which is stupidly low. God bless them. And so, but it's great for an entrepreneur in your early days because it's much less pressure and it's a lot more patient capital because these are intergenerational families that are patient. So I would just double click on the early stage for a social entrepreneur, as it were, that sometimes capital access, whether from a foundation, government grants, et cetera, can actually be easier.
Interesting. Shamina, do you distinguish between social entrepreneurs and other kinds of entrepreneurs? How do you think about that?
I think it's time horizon. So I think that, in some respects, when you're also working in a place of philanthropy, you're a little bit more upstream. But it's all about creating sustainable business over time. And so where you start on that spectrum in terms of your focus on profitability versus sustainability versus social impact, I think is sort of the key differentiator. It's just thinking about it in terms of a time horizon. Mm-hmm. I think that this piece about not distinguishing, I think the point I'd make is we're at a really unique time. I would like to think about AI and other data as we move into a data-driven economy with more of a social entrepreneurship mindset, right? Because right now, we're seeing the technology, we're seeing the impact of data, we're seeing all of this stuff happen, but we're also at the point where the opportunity is to create incentives for a race to the top, not a race to the bottom. So are there social entrepreneurship thinking, insights that we can bring to this moment that we haven't thought about yet? And if we started to think about AI and data and investment in these things as a socially impactful investment and initiative, what might that look like? And would it be vastly different in terms of profitability than it is now? I'm not so sure.
Interesting. All right, one fun, quick question, and then we'll get to a wrap-up question. We have a question from the audience. How do you give feedback candidly to entrepreneurs who need to move on or close a business that is unlikely to succeed? Anybody can take this.
None of us are good at breaking up, apparently.
What do I know if you're going to succeed or not, right? You determine that. But if you're, it's sort of like what you were talking about earlier. If you're having a bad day, it's not time to quit. That's entrepreneurship. If you're having a bad week, a bad couple of weeks, a bad month, a bad couple of months, welcome to entrepreneurship. That's not the signal to quit. But if you don't believe anymore, that's how I coach entrepreneurs, right? If you don't believe anymore, the opportunity costs are too high, it might be time to move on. But you might move on from something that would have worked if you'd have stuck with it. So it's this constant balance of grit and persistence versus reality setting in.
You're definitely the optimist on our panel. Like I can feel you continually kind of leaning into this triumph over adversity narrative.
If you invest in startups, you have to be that way.
Yeah. What about you, Bing? Is it ever time to quit? Do you ever tell people to?
Meanwhile, I'm wearing black for a reason. Even my hair. No, I think we focus on two things. It's actually not dissimilar from what David's alluding to. I think it's conditions for success. These are the specific categorical things that must be achieved in this amount of time for this to persist. And then I think the second thing is, this is really terrible to invoke. When my dad was dying of terminal cancer in a hospice, he was scared because dying is scary. But I distinctly remember as a 15-year-old, the thing that eased him was telling him all the conditions of what would be okay in the landing. That you may go, but here's how it will feel. Dying actually is painful. Death is actually not. You actually don't realize it when you die. But the process is tough, and so easing that was going to be easy. And then knowing that my mother, my sister, and I were financially and emotionally going to be okay was the other half. And so I'm not trying to make this extreme and superlative and associate mortality with corporate mortality, but I think demonstrating a clear path to a soft landing on the other side is the other half. Because when you don't have that security and specificity, the mind can wander. And that's where you actually have all the emotional sort of effusive problems.
All right, so we're going to wrap up with a final question about sort of the state of the world today. This showed up in many of our audience questions. It was also my last question for you. How do you feel about where we are today in terms of entrepreneurship? We're seeing a lot of flux in the system, from tariffs to a kind of startling shift in narrative around immigration and the desire to welcome more people into this country. That obviously has significant impacts on entrepreneurship. How do you feel about where we are, and how do you think entrepreneurs should think about navigating the present moment? So I think I'm going to start with you, Anastasia.
Well, you hit the nail in the head with the tariffs. I mean, this affects my company a lot. Every component in the beauty industry is made in China because you cannot find any other country that will manufacture components. So we have 145% as now. I hope it's going to change. I hope everybody that is affected will have a way of balancing their sheets with the plus numbers and not minus, because this is going to affect a lot our our balance sheet. I hope it's going to solve, because I don't believe we could be in business if we have to pay this.
Great.
That's my opinion.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to come back to my pessimist and end with my two optimists. Bing?
Oh, it's me. I actually think this is the best time to build. You build in scarcity, you scale in plenty. And I'll invoke a specific example. One of my co-founders, Kevin Lin, founded a platform called Twitch, the largest live streaming platform. Twitch should not have existed in history if YouTube was doing its job. Because the second most streamed category, most monetizable category in 2010 on YouTube was gaming after music. The reason Twitch existed, and the reason this is emblematic right now, is because when economic contractions happen, the large incumbents get scared. Number one, they shore up back into what they know to be true instead of innovating to new areas. Two, because they are large corporations, they have to appease and prioritize among everyone, among many things. They can't actually go deep and super serve just gaming and recognize that live as a format is endemic to this category. Further, publicly, how many times have y'all been on Instagram and been on something you love, like whether it's bakery or construction, and you see some charlatan rando with a silhouette profile commenting on them? Inanities. This happens often. All of us who are experts hate being with charlatans, and we are, by the way, all an expert on something. And so even publicly it's difficult. Further, when it comes to talent, mid-level talent's often laid off because of, again, layoffs, contractions, et cetera. And top talent gets very disenfranchised and disenchanted because of the internal bureaucracy and the lack of innovation. So suddenly talent is now available. And then finally, the good, bad side of tariffs is suppliers may actually be more negotiable right now because of this. And so all this to say, if all these large incumbents cannot innovate and move as deeply as a smaller company, and you can super serve that subset, what would happen once we are in an abundant climate again? So truly, I do believe it's the best time to build right now.
Look at you,
He
optimistic.
turned out to be
Circle
an
of life.
optimist after all.
I learned from you all.
Yes.
Shamina, what do you think? Sorry, we're running out of time, but
Yeah,
I wanna
no,
make sure
I
to
know.
hear-
I think that a lot of what Bing said, I would agree. I think the piece to focus on now that we're seeing a lot with our strivers is focus on services and focusing on places where they can actually, again, leverage their assets to move their business. So pivoting a little bit while we wait for this whole thing to settle down.
Well, you should invest in manufacturing right now. This is the time.
Yeah.
All right, David, what do you think? Take us home.
Always the optimist. Amazing time to be an entrepreneur, amazing time to be an investor. Things need fixing. My best year, we were talking earlier as an investor, 2009. Why? Talent flocking to fewer opportunities, capital flocking to fewer opportunities, and lots of problems to go fix. So entrepreneurs are going to go fix them.
Yeah.
All right, lots of problems to fix. Entrepreneurs, please go fix them. Thank you all for your time this morning, and have the great rest of your day.